Good morning. I think we're ready to begin our workshop session of the commission meeting this morning. The State Textbook and Instructional Materials Quality Commission workshop for September 28th. And I believe that the two members not represented here today weren't going to be present, so we're not expecting the three this morning. So we have some business this morning, and I think it'll be a relatively short workshop and possibly meeting as well. The first item on the workshop agenda, past opening remarks, is item 2, Cycle A update, list of adopted books. So the chair recognizes Dr. Tammy Shelton, Tennessee Department of Education. Mr. Mallory?
How many publishers actually passed? And because under this first page, I see National Geographic, National Geographic, National Geographic is the publisher list. But that's one. That's one publisher.
their books. So it's six total.
So 6 total passed.
Six total publishers, yes.
Any other questions for Dr. Shelton on this? Okay, item 3 on our workshop agenda is Schedule B. Dr. Tammy Shelton, Tennessee Department of Education on Schedule B.
Thank you. So it is the time of the year to start a new cycle. So Section B, Schedule B, you have behind tab 2 if you would like to flip to tab 2. This looks very similar to Section A that I reviewed on September 18th during the workshop and gave you an update. So Section B reviews that we will start this fall is for agriculture, food and natural resources, STEM, health science, transportation, distribution, and logistics, and architecture and construction. So again, this is a cluster of career and technical education textbooks that will start the cycle this fall. What you're looking at is a proposed timeline for that cycle for these books that are under Section B. The dates line up and are very similar through the last year, the process that we just went through with Section A. There's not much difference. If you notice on the timeline, the times that are in red, that's commission member meetings, this is your meetings. The dates and information that you see in blue is for the State Board of Education. And anything that is in black print that is bolded is dates or information that is important for publishers. If you'll notice, the 3 regular scheduled textbook commission member meetings in red have to be determined by the dates because you have not yet set your dates for those meetings. That could be something y'all could discuss in additional business later. You can adopt the timeline with those dates still open and determine those dates for those meetings at a later time if you so choose. Any questions about the timeline or schedule?
Dr. Campbell.
Just a point of clarification, are we dealing with textbooks and learning materials only for elementary and upper school, or does this include junior college or community college?
So this would be the schedule, and of course if you remember the full cycle that you adopted at the last meeting on September 18th deals with pre-K through 12th grade. So what you're looking at here, since it's career and technical education courses, is predominantly 9-12, although they do have a few courses, especially in the STEM area on this list, that is in 6A. So for this cycle, Cycle B, we're going to be predominantly dealing with 612 textbooks.
Mr. Mallory.
I'm missing something. Where's the date of reviewers for these materials?
So if you look on the first page of the timeline, you will notice April 30th and May 1st, textbook review, committee orientation, standards review, publisher's presentation. So would be the first meeting of the advisory panelists to where they would meet together. They would have an orientation, they would have training, where it says publisher's presentations, that's where any publisher that bid their product would actually come and talk to the advisory panelists about their product. So it would start on April 30th and May 1st. May 2nd, if you see the very next row, that's when publishers, all of their materials are due to those advisory panelists and to you as a commission member if you ask for those materials.
What about the reviewers? When do they get assigned? When do we pick those? That type of thing.
So that would start back up earlier in the timeline. If you notice in December 1st, it says call for advisory panelists. That would be where we would send out information to districts across the state
Okay.
or other folks that we would recruit. So it would start on December 1st of this year, 2015.
That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Well, on your recruiting process, is that you just send out, hey, districts, you got anybody want on it? Is that the process?
So, yes, and the first thing we would do, we would create an application. And within that application, we do want a rigorous process because we do want to choose the best of the best across the state. So we would create that application that would be more than just a resume and letter of intent. We would also want to do a work sample possibly in that to see how well they are at reviewing curriculum. And so after that application is submitted, then yes, we would take and send that out through various modes of communication. It could be direct emails to textbook be within the commissioner's update to directors of school, commissioner's update to principals. So we would send that out, and of course we would send it to you, the commission members, so you could forward that on to anyone that you knew that would like to serve as well.
That's what I'm looking for.
And the chair helps with the selection of those advisory panelists, and ultimately that's a chair responsibility of putting them in place. And I've read those resumes and the work samples, and it's a tough process. I mean, they really do a good job screening. And teachers who apply are very invested by the time they apply and demonstrate their expertise. Should we select a March date now, or does that I suppose that doesn't have to happen during the commission meeting? We did not. I didn't notice any replying all to the dates proposed by Allison. All of those dates work for me, but I don't recall what those dates were. And before we leave today, we will need to set the March meeting for sure. So, Allison, could you tell us what those dates were? Okay. And just we can also do this during the regular meeting agenda. So, if you'll be prepared to list those, Allison, that'd be fantastic. Item 4 on the workshop agenda is September 28th commission meeting agenda items. Dr. Shelton, Tennessee Department of Education.
Okay, your agendas are in the front pocket of your notebook if you would like to pull those out and look through those. Of course, first item 1 on the agenda is welcome and introductions, call to order, roll call, and opening remarks from the chairman. Item 2 is the consent items, and at this meeting we have adoption of the agenda, and we have approval of the September 18th meeting minutes. The September 18th meeting minutes are behind tab 3 if you would like to review those during the break, and they were sent to you earlier for your review as well. Item 3 on the agenda is the action items, which will require a roll call vote. Item A is approval of the official list of textbooks for Schedule A, the list that we just went over a few minutes ago, and that official list is also behind tab 4. B, under 3 action items, is approval of Schedule B, the timeline that we just looked at. You have another copy of that behind tab 5. Item C is approval of the revised textbook commission substitution rules on final read. D is election of a new chairperson. 4 is, of course, other business, and then adjournment. Any questions about the agenda?
All right, thank you, Dr. Shelton. If no one is opposed, we could go ahead and call to order our meeting. No one opposed? Okay. So this meeting of the Textbook Commission is called to order at this time. And Mrs. Susan Liverman, Executive Administrative Assistant, Tennessee Department of Education, will call roll.
Ms. Bryant?
Present.
Ms. Bunch?
Present.
Dr. Campbell?
Present.
Ms. Cruz?
Present.
Mr. Mallory?
Present.
Ms. Nash? Dr. Robinson? Mr. Vance?
Present.
Dr. Kirk?
Present.
Dr. Hammond?
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Liverman. Today we have just a few things on the agenda, and including looking again at Schedule A textbooks, and we'll be voting whether or not to approve that list. Also looking at the timeline for Schedule B, the textbook commission substitution rule, final read, and the election of the chairperson. And so we'll say more about those things before each vote, of course. Under consent items for a voice vote, item A is the adoption of the agenda. And I have just briefly describe the different things on the agenda today. And if there is a motion, are there any motions to approve our agenda today?
I'll make that motion.
Any seconds?
Second.
Hey, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, the adoption of the agenda is passed, so we will move forward in our agenda. Item B under consent items is approval of September 18th, 2015 meeting minutes. The chair recognizes Mrs. Susan Liverman, Tennessee Department of Education.
Behind tab 3, you have the September 18th meeting minutes. Did everyone have a chance to review the minutes? If so, Mr. Chairman, we can take a vote to approve these.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I motion we approve the minutes.
Do some commission members want a little bit more time to look at the minutes?
Yeah, give me just a minute.
Okay. We have one motion. We'll wait just a minute as we take a look at the meeting minutes.
I'd like to make an amendment to that, to these minutes, if that'd be appropriate this time.
Okay, do you want to state the amendment you would like to see in the minutes?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that in the minutes it was my objection was based on 5 years getting textbooks, social studies textbooks, into the hands of our children, and I still stand with that objection, and I just like that in the minutes, if that's possible. That'd have been on, I think, page 3.
Okay, Mrs. Liverman, could you make a note on there as to Mr. Mallory's request as the reason for his objection?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so noted.
And with that addition, I'll second the motion for approval of minutes.
Okay, all in favor to approve the minutes of last commission meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the adoption of the September 18th meeting minutes is approved. We're now under Section 3 of the action items. These will be roll call vote. And item A is the approval, is to approve the official list of textbooks for Schedule A, CTE, Advanced Manufacturing, Human Services, and Education and Training. First and final read. Dr. Tammy Shelton, Tennessee Department of Education, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the workshop just a few minutes ago, we discussed the official list, but I'll very briefly restate just a couple of things so that it is in the meeting minutes. So the list that you have before you is for Schedule A, which is some career and technical education textbooks. The advisory panelists did a 2-phase review. Phase 1 really focused on the alignment to the standards, rigor, expectation of the standards, and the important content that we really needed to make sure was there for teachers as they used these books. Out of the bids from the publishing company, the advisory panelists did not pass at the end of Section 1, 10 textbooks. 7 of the publishers chose to withdraw their bids at the end of Section 1 instead of working to revise the content. 3 textbooks, 2 publishers resubmitted information to the advisory panelist. One of those textbooks that was resubmitted, the advisory panelists did review their additional content and revisions, and they passed that book. Two of the books that were resubmitted did not pass and move forward. So out of the original bid information, you actually have 9 textbooks that did not pass through the process. So what you see behind tab 4 is the official recommendation of the list from the advisory panelists that reviewed those books across this summer and into this fall. Any questions?
Mr. Mallory?
I just have one. So 10 didn't make it. How many did make it again?
There was a total of 6 publishing companies
Right.
that had books that passed.
About.
It's in the lower 20s. We can.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Very good job. It looks like y'all doing again. When y'all are making errors, I'll make sure you're aware of it. When you're doing a good job, I'll also make sure that that's done as well. So good job in the screening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Dr. Shelton? Okay, well, I'll hear any motion for the approval of the list of textbooks for Schedule A.
I got that. I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Liverman for a roll call vote.
Ms. Bryan? Ms. Bunch?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Mallory?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Dr. Kirk?
Yes.
Dr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes.
Yeah, the official list of textbooks for Schedule A is approved. Item B under action items is the approval of Schedule B, which is CTE Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources, STEM, Health Science, Transportation, Distribution, and Logistics, Architecture, and Construction. First and final read. Dr. Tammy Shelton, Tennessee Department of Education is recognized.
Thank you. If you'll look behind tab 5, you have the timeline for the review process for Schedule B. The timeline looks very similar to Schedule A. Many dates are around the same time each year. If you'll notice through the schedule, it does start with the recruitment and approval of advisory panelists. It moves into bids for the publishers through this spring. We'll start training advisory panelists the very 1st of May. They will review the books through the 2-step process that I described earlier across the summer, with publishers having the opportunity at the end of Section 1 to revise any content that the reviewers may have flagged or any missing content they could add. If you'll notice, it's very similar, and I will point out again that anything that you see in red is dates for the commission meetings, your meetings. Any dates that you see in blue are for the State Board of Education meetings, and anything that is in black print that is bolded is important dates or information for the publishers. Any question about the proposed timeline?
We're going to set the March meeting date when we get to other business on the agenda. Any questions for Dr. Shelton?
Make a motion we approve.
Okay. Any seconds? Okay, we have a second on the motion to approve. Mrs. Liverman for the vote.
Ms. Bryant? Ms. Bunch?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Mallory?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Dr. Kirk?
Yes.
And Dr. Hammond?
Yes.
Dr. Hammond, you have 8 ayes.
Okay, thank you. Schedule B is approved. Item C under action items is the approval of the revised textbook commission substitution rule, final read. Dr. Tammy Shelton, Tennessee Department of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Behind tab 6, you will see the revised substitution rule. This is a simple clarification of language and one addition. So there have been no changes since first read at the September 18th Commission meeting. If you'll notice the two items that are updates within this rule, at the top you see that the information that says that the substituted textbook would bear the same copyright date as the original, that information has been deleted. Publishers, as they update their textbooks, would like the updated copyright date to align with their revised materials. The third, if you'll go down in the rule at the very bottom, number 3, was added that books that are substituted by the publishers could not be submitted 12 months prior to the expiration of their contract. So one of the main reasons for adding this is that during that 12 months before the contract expires, those books actually would be in the review process that was just described, that you just passed the official list for Section A, and the timeline that you just went through for Section B. These books should be in that process of review at that 12-month time period before their contracts expire. And so that's why that was added to the substitution rule. Are there any questions?
Okay, Mr. Mallory.
Okay, we have a set of rules that we go by, policies and things of that nature. Not law, but a lot of these policies are based on our law, and some are just policies left over from the previous commission. Correct?
Yes, the textbook commission has its own policies. Yes.
Okay, and I guess I'm a stickler here, but the previous textbook commission was dissolved, and we're going by a policies or bylaws of a commission at this point in time that, well, it's dissolved. So my thought process is that maybe for next meeting we need to review all these policies, because technically, we haven't approved any of our policies, have we?
You can certainly, before the next meeting, contact the chair and state which ones you would like to review for sure. Not sure whether we would take all the policies out and take them on all at one time, or if it'd probably a matter of us individually reviewing before March and identifying ones that we might have an issue with, because there are policies that are needed for us to function.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not saying we just throw them out. I'm saying that, hey, we probably should have approved them, and then if we got revisions or something of that nature, because does that make sense?
Yes, I believe that's the way that it would work. Ms. Bunch?
I think when the legislature revised the textbook commission, they probably took a really hard look at our guidelines and our bylaws. And while we may need to take a look at our operating procedures, I have a really good feeling that our legislators have already done that for us, to make sure that some things that were perhaps inappropriate or had gone by the wayside have been removed. So they may have done some of this work for us. I think for this particular thing, this is more of an action piece that goes along with just how we do business in selecting and reviewing and adopting textbooks, rather than operational procedures for our commission.
Having served on the commission for a little while, I will say that we're in constant review of our policies. I can remember a few years back when we changed the policy on how publishers submit their books for review from paper form to electronic form. That's just one example. And then when the law changed, we did change several of our policies because we had to, according to the law. And so, and then, when the law changed, of course, our legal team reviewed all of our policies to make sure they're in alignment with the new law. But that's not to say that we don't need to continue doing that. We need to continue doing that and making sure that the policies align with what they need to be.
And I guess I'm just doing an I and T, dotting an I, crossing a T. I'm not really a real concern. Just want to make sure we get, because if we don't, you know what happens.
Yes, sir. At this time, we could, and that was on topic with our with item C there, looking at our rules and policies pertaining to this rule, the substitution rule.
I'll make a motion. We accept it.
Motion to accept. Is there a second? Okay, Dr. Kirk seconds, and so Mrs. Liverman for the roll call vote.
Ms. Bryant?
Yes.
Ms. Bunch?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Mallory? Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Dr. Kirk?
Yes.
Dr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 8 ayes.
Thank you. The revised textbook commission substitution rule is approved. Item D is the election of a chairperson, and I again want to thank you for your support and kind words as I've decided to step down and turn over to someone else. And a couple things that I've been asked to say about the role of chairperson. The chairperson obviously chairs our meetings. They're a voting member. Their vote is not weighted. They approve the agenda for the meeting and the minutes before each meeting. They help and ultimately approve in the selection of the state advisory panelists to actually do the book reviewing. So you will review resumes and applications as we described earlier. We actually go through this process as a commission under Tennessee law yearly, annually, and so it's at the first textbook meeting of the year, which in 2016 will be March. And so we'll actually do this again in March. So this will be an interim appointment of chairperson. And once we get to nominations, I know Joanna will cover this, but we just take nominations. It does not require a second. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Joanna Collins, Staff Attorney, Tennessee Department of Education.
Thank you. At the September 18th meeting, Dr. Hammond announced that he is resigning his position as chair. And so nominations are in order for the office of chair. And in a moment, I'll call for nominations from the floor. Under statute, a majority vote by the commission is required, which means that we'll need 6 votes to elect a chair. And at this time, we'll take any nominations.
I would like to nominate Dr. Bill Campbell.
I second it.
Are there any further nominations? Any discussion? Okay. Since there are no additional nominations, the nominations for the office of chair are now closed, and we will proceed with the vote by roll call. If you don't mind, Susan.
Ms. Bryant? Ms. Bunch?
Yes.
Dr. Campbell?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Mallory?
Yes.
Mr. Vance?
Yes.
Dr. Kirk?
Yes.
And Dr. Hammond?
Yes.
Chairman Hammond, you have 8 ayes.
Thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Campbell. Appreciate your willingness to serve and lead. At this time, item 4 on the agenda is other business from the commission, and I think one thing we know we need to do is the March date. And so I want to call up Allison to tell us what those potential dates were in March.
Good morning. The 2 dates in March that were proposed were the 7th and the 11th. I heard back from Ms. Nash that she would prefer the 11th, and I believe, Mr. Chairman, you and Dr. Campbell said that you were open to that date too. So if we can decide on the 11th, I think we'll be set.
Okay. Is anyone strongly opposed to the 11th? Good. Hopefully far enough out where it's not a conflict for many. So let's say March the 11th, and that's on a Friday. Yes, sir. Any other business from the commission? Okay, with that, our meeting today is adjourned. Thank you very much. Good to see everyone.